Mahamati, the arhat is the one who has attained the jhanas, samadhis, emancipations, powers, psychic faculties, and with whom there are no more passions, sufferings, and discriminations. Hence the appellation, arhat. Single quote. Mahamati said, "Now, the Blessed One declares that there are three kinds of arhats. To which one of the three is this term, arhat, to be applied? To one who makes straight way for the path of cessation, or to one who neglects all his accumulated stock of merit for the sake of his vow to enlighten others, or to one who is a form of the transformation Buddha?" Replied the Blessed One, Mahamati, the term, arhat, applies to the sravaka who makes straight way for the path of cessation, and to no others. Mahamati, as for the others, they are those who have finished practicing the deeds of a bodhisattva. They are forms of the transformation Buddha. With skillful means born of their fundamental and original vows, they manifest themselves among the multitudes in order to adorn the assemblages of the Buddhas. Mahamati, here in these paths and abodes of existence, they give out varieties of teachings which are based on discrimination. That is to say, as they are above such things as the attainment of the fruit, the jhanas, the jhana practices, or subjects for meditation, and as they know that this world is no more than what is seen of the mind itself, they discourse on the fruit attained for the sake of all beings. Further, Mahamati, if the stream entered should think, "These are the fetters, but I am disengaged from them," they commit a double fault. They still hold to the vices of the ego, and they have not freed themselves from the fetters. Further, Mahamati, in order to go beyond the jhanas, the immeasurables, and the formless world, the signs of this visible world which is mind itself should be discarded. The samapatti leading to the extinction of thought and sensation does not enable one to transcend the world of particulars, for there is nothing but mind. So it is said. 176. The jhanas, the immeasurables, the formless, the samadhis, and the complete extinction of thought. These do not exist where the mind alone is. 177. The fruit of the stream entered, and that of the once returning, and that of the never returning, and arhatship. These are the bewildered states of mind. 178. The jhana practicer, the jhana, the subject for it, the destruction, the seeing of the truth. These are no more than discriminations. When this is recognized, there is emancipation. 50. Further, Mahamati, there are two kinds of intellect. The intellect as an examining function, and the intellect which functions in connection with the attachment to ideas of discrimination. As for the intellect that examines, Mahamati, it is that act of intellect which examines into the self-nature of things, finding it to be devoid of the four propositions, and unattainable. This is known as the intellect that examines. What is meant by being devoid of the four propositions? It means to be devoid of oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness, being and non-being, eternity and non-eternity. These are called the four propositions. Mahamati, train yourself to examine carefully all things as regards these four propositions. What, Mahamati, is the intellect which functions in connection with the attachment to ideas of discrimination? It is the intellect with which the mind is discriminated and the ideas arising therefrom are adhered to as real. And this adherence gives rise to the conceptions of warmth, fluidity, motility, and solidity as characterizing the gross elements. While the tenacious holding to proposition, reason, definition, and illustration leads to the assertion of a non-entity as entity. This is called the intellect that functions in connection with the attachment to ideas of discrimination. This, Mahamati, is what characterizes the two kinds of intellect, in accordance with which the Bodhisattvas, thoroughly mastering the signs of egolessness of persons and things, and, by means of knowledge of imagelessness, becoming conversant with the stage of examination and practice, will attain the first stage of bodhisattvahood and acquire 100 jhanas. Attaining the excellent samadhis, they will see 100 Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. They will enter into 100 kalpa that were prior to the present and also into those that will follow the present. They will illuminate 100 Buddha lands, and, illuminating 100 Buddha lands, they will understand the signs belonging to the higher stages. And by virtue of the most exalted vows they will manifest wonderful powers. They will be baptized by the Buddhas when they reach the stage of dharmakaya. And realizing the inmost realm of the tathagatas, they will be provided with things which are closely connected with the 10 inexhaustible vows. And, in order to bring all beings into maturity, they will shine out in various forms with the rays of transformation. They will be quite absorbed in the bliss of self-realization. 51. Further, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas are to be well acquainted with the primary and the secondary elements. How do the Bodhisattvas know the primary and the secondary elements? Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas are to know this, that the truth is that the primary elements have never come into existence, and that, Mahamati, these elements are unborn. Thus understood, there is nothing in the world but what is discriminated by our imagination. When it is recognized that the visible world is no more than mind itself, external objects cease to be realities, and there is nothing but what is discriminated by the mind and perceived as external. That is to say, let it be understood that the triple world has nothing to do with the primary and the secondary elements. That it is removed from the 4 propositions and philosophical systems, that it has nothing to do with a personal ego and what belongs to it, and that it establishes itself in the abode of real reality, where it is seen in its own form, i.e., in its unborn state. Mahamati, what is meant by the elements derived from the primary elements? The element discriminated as vasidati produces the realm of water, inner and outer. The element discriminated as energy produces the realm of fire, inner and outer. The element discriminated as motility produces the realm of air, inner and outer. The element discriminated as divisibility of form gives birth to the realm of earth together with space, inner and outer. Because of the attachment to the incorrect truths, there is the aggregation of the 5 skandhas giving rise to the elements primary and secondary. Again, Mahamati, the vijnana has its cause in our attachment to and the desire for the multitudinousness of statements and objective fields. And it continues to evolve in another path of existence. Mahamati, the secondary elements such as earth, etc., are said to have their cause in the primary elements which, however, are non-existent. Because, Mahamati, of things endowed with being, characteristics, marks, perceivableness, abode, and work, one can say that they are born of the combination of various effect-producing elements, but not of things which are devoid of characteristic marks. For this reason, Mahamati, the elements primary and secondary are the discriminations of the philosophers and not mine. 52. Further, Mahamati, I will explain what characterizes the self-nature of the skandhas. Mahamati, what are the 5 skandhas? They are form, sensation, thought, conformation, and consciousness. Mahamati, 4 of these have no material forms: sensation, thought, conformation, and consciousness. Form, Mahamati, belongs to what is made of the four primary elements, and these elements differ from one another in their individual signs. But the four skandhas that are without form cannot be reckoned as four, they are like space. For instance, Mahamati, space cannot be numbered, and it is due to our discrimination that it is designated as such. In the same way, Mahamati, the skandhas that are beyond calculability as they have no number marks, are not to be predicated as existing and non-existing, and are beyond the four propositions. But to the ignorant they are described as subject to numeration, but not so to the wise. Again, Mahamati, by the wise the five skandhas are regarded as thought constructions, devoid of dualities such as otherness and not otherness. For they are like varieties of forms and objects in a vision, like images and persons in a dream. As they have no better substance for their support, and as they obstruct the passage of noble wisdom, there is what is known as the skandha discrimination. This, Mahamati, is what characterizes the self-nature of the skandhas. This discrimination must be discarded by you, and having discarded this, you should declare the truth of solitude. Keeping back the views held by the philosophers. The truth of solitude is to be announced in all the Buddha assemblies, Mahamati, and thereby the teaching of the egolessness of things is purified and you will enter upon the stage of far-going. Entering upon the stage of dharamgama you will become the master of many samadhis, and, attaining the will body you will realize the samadhi known as mayapama. Thoroughly conversant with the powers, psychic faculties and self-control, you will be the supporter of all beings like the earth. Mahamati, as the great earth is the supporter of all beings, so is the bodhisattva mahasattva the supporter of all beings. 53. Further, Mahamati, there are four kinds of nirvana. What are the four? They are the nirvana which is attained when the self-nature of all things is seen as non-entity. The nirvana which is attained when varieties of individual marks characterizing all things are seen as non-entities. The nirvana which is attained when there is the recognition of the non-existence of a being endowed with its own specific attributes. And the nirvana which is attained when there takes place the severance of the bondage conditioning the continuation of individuality and generality of the skandhas. Mahamati, these four views of nirvana belong to the philosophers and are not my teaching. According to my teaching, Mahamati, the getting rid of the discriminating manovijnana. This is said to be nirvana. Mahamati said, "Does not the Blessed One establish 8 vijnanas?" The Blessed One replied, "I do, Mahamati." Mahamati said, "If 8 vijnanas are established, why do you refer to the getting rid of the manovijnana and not of the 7 other vijnanas as well?" The Blessed One said, "With the manovijnana as cause and supporter, Mahamati, there rise the 7 vijnanas." Again, Mahamati, the manovijnana is kept functioning, as it discerns a world of objects and becomes attached to it, and by means of manifold habit energy or memory. It nourishes the alayavijnana. The manas is evolved along with the notion of an ego and its belongings, to which it clings and on which it reflects. It has no body of its own, nor its own marks. The alayavijnana is its cause and support. Because the world which is the mind itself is imagined real and attached to as such, the whole psychic system evolves mutually conditioning. Like the waves of the ocean, Mahamati, the world which is the mind manifested, is stirred up by the wind of objectivity, it evolves and dissolves. Thus, Mahamati, when the manovijnana is got rid of, the 7 vijnanas are also got rid of. So it is said. 179. I enter not into nirvana by means of being, of work, of individual signs. I enter into nirvana when the vijnana which is caused by discrimination ceases. 180. With it i.e. the mano-vijnana for its cause and support, the manas secures its use. The vijnana causes the citta to function, and is supported by it. 181. Like a great flood where no waves are stirred because of its being dried up, the vijnana system in its various forms ceases to work when there is the annihilation of the mano-vijnana. 54. Further, Mahamati, I will tell you about the various features of the false imagination. And when you and the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas are well acquainted with each of them in its specific form, you will get away from discrimination. And seeing well and knowing the way of inner realization by noble wisdom and also the ways of speculation by the philosophers, you will cast off discriminations such as grasped and grasping, and will not be induced to discriminate in respect to the multiple aspects of relativity knowledge, as well as the forms of the false imagination. What are the various features of the false imagination, Mahamati? They are the discriminations as regards words, meaning, individual marks, property, self-nature, cause. Philosophical views, reasoning, birth, no birth, dependence, and bondage and emancipation. These, Mahamati, are the various features of the false imagination. Now, Mahamati, what is the discrimination of words? That is the becoming attached to various sweet voices and singing. This is the discrimination as regards words. What is the discrimination of meaning? It is the discrimination by which one imagines that words rise depending on whatever subjects they express, and which subjects one regards as self-existent and belonging to the realization of noble wisdom. What is the discrimination of individual marks? It is to imagine in whatever is denoted by words the multitudinousness of individual marks which are like a mirage, and, clinging tenaciously to them, to discriminate all things according to these categories: warmth, fluidity, motility, and solidity. What is the discrimination of property? It is to desire a state of wealth such as gold, silver, and various precious stones. What is the discrimination of self-nature? It is to make discrimination according to the imaginary views of the philosophers in reference to the self-nature of all things which they stoutly maintain, saying, "This is just it, and there is no other." Single quote. What is the discrimination of cause? That is, to distinguish the notion of causation in reference to being and non-being and to imagine that there are cause signs. This is the discrimination of cause. What is the discrimination of philosophical views? That means getting attached to the philosopher's wrong views and discriminations concerning such notions as being and non-being, oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness. What is the discrimination of reasoning? It means the teaching whose reasoning is based on the grasping of the notion of an ego substance and what belongs to it. What is the discrimination of birth? It means getting attached to the notion that things come into existence and go out of it according to causation. What is the discrimination of no birth? It is to discriminate that all things are from the beginning unborn, that the causeless substances which were not, come into existence by reason of causation. What is the discrimination of dependence? It means the mutual dependence of gold and the filament which is made of gold. What is the discrimination of bondage and emancipation? It is like imagining that there is something bound because of something binding, as in the case of a man who by the help of a cord ties a knot or loosens it. These, Mahamati, are the various features of the false imagination, to which all the ignorant and simple-minded ones cling, imagining that things are or are not. Those attached to the notion of relativity are attached to the notion of multitudinousness of things rising from the false imagination. It is like seeing varieties of objects depending on Maya. But these varieties thus revealing themselves are discriminated by the ignorant as something other than Maya itself according to their way of thinking. Now, Mahamati, Maya and varieties of objects are neither different nor one. If they were different, varieties of objects would not have Maya for their cause. If Maya were one with varieties of objects, there would be no distinction between the two. But as there is the distinction, these two, Maya and varieties of objects, are neither one nor different. For this reason you and the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas should never give yourselves up to the notion of being and non-being. 55. So it is said. 182. The cheetah is bound up with the objective world. The intellect's function is to speculate. And in the excellent state of imagelessness there is the evolving of transcendental wisdom. 183. According to the false imagination, self-substance is, but from the point of view of relativity it is not. Owing to perversion, what is discriminated is grasped as real. In the relativity there is no discrimination. 184. Multitudinousness of differentiations is imagined as real by the ignorant, but being like Maya they obtain not. Varieties of individual forms are discriminated as such, but they really do not obtain. 185. To imagine individual forms is wrong. It puts one in bondage. They are born of mind due to the false imagination of the ignorant. Based on the relativity they are discriminated. 186. The existence thus subjected to discrimination is no other than its relativity aspect. The false imagination is of various forms. Based on the relativity, discrimination is carried on. 187. Conventional truth and ultimate truth. If there be a third, non-entity is its cause. The false imagination belongs to the conventional. When it is cut asunder, there is the realm of the wise. 188. As to the yogins, there is one reality which reveals itself as multiplicity, and yet there is no multiplicity in it. So is the nature of the false imagination. 189. As by the dim-eyed a variety of objects is seen and imagined, while the dimness itself is neither a form nor a no-form, so is the relativity discriminated by the unknowing ones. 190. As is pure gold, water free from dirt, the sky without a cloud, so is the mind pure when detached one from the false imagination. 191. Falsely imagined existence is not, but from the relativity point of view it is. Assertion and refutation are destroyed when one is freed from the imagination. 192. If the relativity aspect of existence is, while the imagination is not, this means that there is a being apart from being and that a being is born of a non-being. 193. Depending on the false imagination there obtains the relativity aspect of existence. From the conjunction of form and name there rises false imagination. 194. False imagination can never be perfect knowledge. It is not productive of anything else but itself. Then one knows what is meant by ultimate truth whose self-nature is purity. 195. There are 10 kinds too of false imagination and 6 kinds of relativity. In the knowledge of tathagata innerly attained there is no differentiation. 196. Truth consists in knowing the 5 dharmas and also the 3 svabhavas. When the yogin thus comprehends the truth, he does not transgress tathagata. 197. According to the form of relativity, there are those names that belong to false imagination. And the various aspects of false imagination arise from relativity. 198. When well pondered with intelligence, there is neither relativity nor false imagination. Where perfect knowledge is, there is nothing dualistically existent. For how with intelligence can discrimination take place? 199. Where perfect knowledge is, the existent cannot be qualified with being and non-being. In what cannot be qualified with being and non-being, how can there be these two svabhavas? 200. Because of false imagination, the two svabhavas are established. Where there is false imagination, multitudinousness of things is recognized, which being purified the spiritual condition of the wise obtains. 201. Where there is false imagination, there is multitudinousness of objects, which are discriminated under the aspect of relativity. If otherwise discriminated, one becomes attached to the teachings of the philosophers. 202. What is imagined being subjected to further imagination? There are various views from which rises the doctrine of causal origination. When the dualistic discrimination is got rid of, there indeed is perfect knowledge. 1. This whole section treats of the threefold svabhava, chiefly explaining where parikalpita is differentiated from paratantra. While the explanation sometimes appears quite complicated, the main point is clear enough. The kalpita is a net of wrong interpretations woven about the paratantra, which is the dualistic view of existence, and which is valid as far as it goes. But to reach the nishpanna it is necessary to transcend all forms of dualism, for the paratantra is by no means ultimate truth. 53. Further, Mahamati said, "Pray tell me, Blessed One, about the one vehicle that characterizes the inner realization of noble wisdom. Whereby, Blessed One, I and other bodhisattva mahasattvas, becoming conversant with the one vehicle which marks the inner attainment of noble wisdom, may be established without depending on anybody else in the teaching of the Buddha." Said the Blessed One. Then, Mahamati, listen well and reflect within yourself as I tell you. Mahamati the Bodhisattva Mahasattva said, "Yes, I will, Blessed One," and gave ear to the Blessed One. Thereupon the Blessed One said, "In accordance with the authoritative teachings in which there are no discriminations, Mahamati, let the Bodhisattva Mahasattva retire by himself to a quiet secluded place, where he may reflect within himself, not relying on anybody else, but by means of his own inner intelligence, in order to discard erroneous views and discriminations, make successive advances and exert himself to finally enter upon the stage of tathagata-hood. This, Mahamati, is the characteristic feature of the inner realization to be gained by means of noble wisdom. What characterizes the way of the one vehicle? I call it the one vehicle because thereby one recognizes and realizes the path leading to the one vehicle. How is this path of the one vehicle to be recognized and realized? The recognition of the one vehicle is obtained when there is no rising of discrimination by doing away with the notion of grasped and grasping and by abiding in the reality of suchness. Mahamati, this recognition of the one vehicle, except by the Tathagata himself, has never been obtained before by anybody else. The philosophers, sravakas, pratyekabuddhas, Brahmins, etc. For this reason, Mahamati, this is known as the one vehicle. Mahamati said, "For what reason is it that the Blessed One speaks of the triple vehicle and not of the one vehicle?" The Blessed One replied, "Because there is no teaching whereby the sravakas and pratyekabuddhas can realize nirvana by themselves, I do not speak of the one vehicle." Thus, Mahamati, the sravakas and pratyekabuddhas are disciplined, segregated, and trained in meditation according to the discourse of the tathagata, whereby they are led to emancipation and not by themselves. Further, Mahamati, as they have not yet destroyed the habit energy of karma and the hindrance of knowledge. All the sravakas and pratyekabuddhas are unable to realize the egolessness of things and have not attained the inconceivable transformation death. I preach to the sravakas and pratyekabuddhas the triple vehicle and not the one vehicle. 1 When Mahamati, destroying all the evil habit energy. They realize the egolessness of things. They who are now free from the evil habit energy will not be intoxicated by the samadhis and will be awakened into the realm of no-evil-outflows. Now being taken into a super world which is the realm of no-evil-outflows, they will gather up all the material for the attainment of the dharmakaya, which is of severeign power and beyond conception. So it is said. 203. The Deva vehicle, the Brahma vehicle, the Sravaka vehicle, the Pratyekabuddha vehicle, and the Tathagata vehicle, of these I speak. 204. So long as there is a mind making conscious efforts, there can be no culmination as regards the various vehicles. When a revulsion takes place in the mind, there is neither a vehicle nor one who rides in it. 205. There is really no establishment of various vehicles, and so I speak of the one vehicle. 2 But in order to carry the ignorant I talk of a variety of vehicles. 206. There are 3 emancipations, and in all things there is no ego substance. Knowledge and passions are of the same nature. When one is emancipated, they are discarded. 207. Like a piece of wood floating on the waves of the ocean, the sravaka obsessed with individual marks is driven along the stream of existence. 208. Though disengaged from the actively functioning passions, they the sravakas are still bound up with the habit energy of the passions. Intoxicated with the liquor of the samadhi, they still have their abode in the realm of outflows. 209. In this there is no course of finality, nor retrogression either. Losing himself in the attainment of the samadhi body, he is not at all awakened even to the end of kalpa. 210. Like unto the drunkard who, being awakened from his intoxication, regains his intelligence, the sravakas will have the realization of the Buddha's truth, which is his own body. Here ends the 2nd chapter, known as the Collection of All the Dharmas, taken from the Lankavatara of 36,000 slokas.